Hey friends, how's it going? It's 4:03. We can get kicked off. Happy New Year, everybody. Happy 2022. Um, I hope everybody had a good holidays. I think this is going to be another amazing year in crypto. I feel like, you know, last year was the birth of so many amazing things, like serious mainstream adoption taking hold. Uh, all sorts of layer one blockchains getting traction, layer two, and of course DAOs becoming a real thing. And I feel like this year is going to be when everything comes together in such a powerful way. And of course, we already have all this great pre-existing momentum after 6 months, and we're kicking ass. So I don't know about you, but I'm super excited. So from a tokenomics perspective, just kind of picking up where we left off last year, there's a lot going on. So I can just jump in here to the first slide. As always, if you guys have any questions, ask in the stage chat or give me a shout on the stage there. So we just had a interesting discussion in the Treasury Management Committee, which has been bolstered with John and Willie's presence in the absence of Daniel and Al. John and Willie are excellent proxy voters for most of January, so thank you guys. One of the important and time-sensitive issues we're weighing right now is how do we obtain stablecoin exposure to pay both January payroll and likely the ETH Denver related costs. It appears that as of Thursday, that proposal will pass. It's been pushed through by Brittany and Danielle, which is $100,000. So all told, when you add everything up, we're looking on something the order of around 550,000 USD. We need the means to go about that. Last month we used a Rari loan, and it was pretty effective. The risk with these loans, if you don't sufficiently collateralize them, you can get nuked and lose all your money. Not a good day, but we were very careful to over collateralize. The difference this month is we're getting the Tokenomics token streamed to us frequently on an ongoing basis. That's because we've deposited $30 million worth of Fox into that Tokenomics reactor that we have. So just to give you a sense of how awesome these rewards are, at the current toke value, given current conditions, we're streaming about $200,000 a week worth of toke into our treasury. So right there, we've tapped into a really nice revenue stream, and of course, we're taking some risk on by depositing all that money, but this is really cool, and there's going to be a lot more opportunities like that in DeFi land. We're really putting our Fox treasury to use here. So the discussion was we could perhaps sell some of that toke that we're already streaming in to fund a portion of our payroll and then take out a loan. We ultimately decided to just take out a loan for now for everything we need, and then hold off and sell $150,000 worth of toke at the end of the month, just in order to get more exposure to stable coins. I think this is a good balance. And of course, holding toke has its own rewards as well. We can direct liquidity, and it's also a good signal to their community that we really believe in it. But yeah, it's really cool to see that revenue stream really working for us at this point. On the topic of stablecoins in general, as you might recall, the number one priority in tokenomics right now, it has been really to achieve more stablecoin exposure as a hedge against pullback in Fox. So we have a lot of different irons in this fire. John and I have been talking to the Olympus Pro team in their Discord about starting a Fox to USDC bond. And we're actually in the final stages of that. This initially would consist of selling $1 million worth of Fox for USDC over the course of a month. And it's something that it should be scalable. The people over there have been really accommodating and super chill. And I think within a week, it's likely that could be up. So we'll keep you up to date on that. But that'll be great because then, it's another sort of streaming into our revenue or streaming into our treasury every day, or however often the sweeping period is there. Getting more exposure to stables and something that we could scale up. We also talked to the Fay team late last year about doing a DAO to DAO token swap, something larger, like on the order of like $5 to $10 million. This is kind of a natural fit because Fay is, we're already involved in their liquidity as a service program. We use them when we tap into the Rari pool. And we already have a pre-existing relationship. Of course, they've also integrated or joined forces with Rari, which is just unlocking a lot of really cool, interesting approaches there. They have some new types of DeFi products they'll be rolling out. These are a little bit more, I think, under the radar or stealth mode right now. I don't want to talk about them in a public forum just yet, but what they've described to us sounds pretty cool. So lots of interesting potential there. John, Willie, and I crafted a tentative proposal for the Fay and Rari communities that they are going to be looking at before we actually formally submit it, they being our contacts over there. But this could be another really nice way to get the exposure we want, but at the same time, really creating a really cool win-win for both communities and kind of signaling like, hey, we really believe in this project, and hopefully, that they'll also see the value in an integration. Like, there's a lot of interesting ways that we can integrate Rari loans into our platform. So more than just a way of getting exposure to another asset for the Rari and Fay teams, this is also a way to kind of build a close relationship with an eye towards getting them more users thanks to our platform's unique abilities. So that is looking good so far, but that will take time, and especially because their governance processes probably might be modified or muddled a little bit just in the wake of this new sort of unprecedented joining of forces. Happy New Year for Fox. Nice 20% gain. Maybe this can continue every day for like 2 weeks. That would be pretty cool. Maybe its New Year's resolution is to go to $5. That would be awesome. Also on the stablecoin front, the Treasury Committee pre-approved selling $2 million worth of Fox as part of the success token sale. Again, this is kind of a unique wrapped option. We're talking like, awesome financial wizardry here that wasn't really possible before DeFi. But this would essentially, at least from the perspective of treasury diversification, it would give us a $2 million worth of USDC in exchange for selling that Fox in this option context. So that's been in the works, and I think it's a promising way to get more stables. And then lastly, we have these ongoing talks with the folks at Index Coop, and they have multiple investors who could be interested in Fox. Perhaps those investors will start to get FOMO if Fox continues its little early uptrend here in 2022. But regardless, we're talking about selling Fox at a discount to these investors over a long vesting period. And again, we're talking like 6 and up to 7 figure types of investments, and maybe aiming to sell even more than like $10 million worth overall. So the thing that stresses me out is, the fact that we don't currently have any stablecoin or any significant stablecoin exposure. If you look at our treasury, we do have, thanks to our awesome Cosmos validator, we do have a chunk of USD or UST. That's the Terra stablecoin. We also have some excess USDC from last month's payroll. Altogether, that adds up to about $100,000 worth. Not a ton. But it's, as far as I'm concerned, we continue to be in a tenuous position until we have that stablecoin exposure. So we'll keep pushing forward on these fronts. I'll pause real quick and see if anybody has any thoughts. Yeah, good point, Mills. Multiple stables. Every stable has its own set of risks. USDC is more, I would say, on the regulatory side, and they're more centralized. There's always the risk of getting blacklisted or something like that, although I don't think those risks are high. On the more decentralized side, with something like UST, where they're using a seigniorage approach, there's its own set of risks over there. Of course, they're also based on Cosmos, which has its own maybe protocol level unique risks. They're doing fine so far. If you look at some of the MakerDAO guys, they're essentially coming out and calling UST a Ponzi, which is pretty, that's a pretty blunt thing to say. I personally don't agree with that, but the point does remain. Each of these stablecoin approaches has its own risks. So over time, having like a nice variety of stablecoins in our stablecoin stable would be great. A mix of UST, USDC, and FEI, DAI, everything would be ideal, I think. Let's see here. Cool. So one of the themes right now, and I think it's cool just to it's always good to take a step back and get some perspective. It's been kind of crazy. Just in crypto is always crazy, but things move very fast in the DAO. For myself, getting up to speed on jumping into the DAO and then getting to tokenomics and doing all that very quickly, and then jumping in to the deep end has been fun. But it was nice to take a little bit of time over the holidays just to unwind. And now that we're jumping back into it occurs to me how much we've already got done, and the main thing is I feel like we kind of have a sense of momentum, both in the DAO in general and in tokenomics. We have this awesome open source platform, and then we have multiple tools that we're building to really take advantage of our treasury, as evidenced by all these different ways we can raise money with stable coins. But there's a lot of other stuff going on as well. So one of the notions, and I think it's super powerful, one of the sort of guiding premises, I think, is that to the extent that Fox is integrated into more DeFi platforms throughout the broader crypto space, that is a win for ShapeShift. Like anytime we partner with an organization, anytime we wind up on a platform, that's always a good thing. It increases, it has a positive impact on liquidity, increases our visibility, and encourages people not just to become Fox holders, but also maybe to, hey, check out the Discord. What are we up to? And it also introduces new revenue streams. I don't want to be totally absolute about that. There's probably some places we wouldn't want a presence, like scammy types of dexes, but we're not aiming for that. But with that in mind, I'm super excited to announce our first bounty. As a reminder, guys, we have $50,000 worth of, or $50,000 to spend on tokenomics salaries and bounties over the next 3 months. This is on, for people that can contribute in various ways. Of course, we don't know exactly what those contributions might be, but the point is we have some money to spend on tokenomics, and if, we want to be able to compensate you for your talent if you can add something to the mix. So that our first bounties will be outreach to both Aave and Compound in order to get Fox integrated into those platforms. What makes this possible is now there's a Chainlink price feed for Fox, thanks to the hard work that's gone in to doing that. It was kind of an uphill battle, but it's integrated now. So that was a blocker to these types of integrations with these DeFi 1.0 platforms, and now there's really nothing to prevent us from hypothetically from getting integrated. The challenge is these are somewhat difficult governance processes. These are old school, at least in crypto terms, old school projects. They have their kind of set in stone processes. And basically what we need is for people to come along and help push this through. So what I'm proposing for a bounty is $500 to submit a proposal to one of these, and then an additional $1,000 if the proposal or if the protocol actually integrates Fox into the platform. And this would be for each one. So hypothetically, if somebody came along and did both of these, they could earn $3,000. I don't actually know much about these processes, but I do know that this is a perfect use, I think, of bounties. Let's see, John, you're saying it should be for proposal that fits the governance requirements. Yes, I think that would be categorized as a successful submission.
Yeah, good point. Mostly, I just don't want to see someone show up and be like, I submitted a proposal and they didn't actually hit any of the requirements and then try to do it.
Yeah, something that is actually, that enables the proposal to go in front of the community and get voted on, and it's actually at that point they're deliberating on it. And we can certainly be more specific with those requirements and the bounty stuff. I actually need to give a little bit more thought about how this will work. For some bounties, in DAO land, it's sort of like a first come, first serve. Hey, if you do this first, you get the thing, you get the reward. In this case, it doesn't make sense to have multiple people kind of doing their own thing on this, because then we have multiple submissions, it could get sloppy. So I actually need to think a little bit more about this. We've also had a few people in the past reach out about biz dev type stuff. We're not in B2B land anymore. We're in D2D, DAO to DAO, which is super cool. But just be on the lookout for more information about that. I am super excited to start spending some of the Tokenomics workstream money on talent, on your guys' talent, and helping us gain momentum. So that's those are kind of like the more I would say like kind of some of the more treasury related stuff that's going on. I've been mentally kind of dividing these things into two categories. Like specifically these tokenomics meetings, we kind of have the treasury stuff, we have specific things, it's a little bit easier to grok. On the other hand, we have the value accrual piece, which gets a lot more far out, cerebral, and a bit abstract. And that relates to things like, how will value accrue to Fox, and why do people want to hold Fox? How does SFox work? What should our liquidity mining approach be? And what are the pros and cons of that? So that's essentially going to be the focus for, I think, the second slide here. It's actually time to start thinking about liquidity mining, because this ends in February, the current phase, so we need to have a proposal to do this, to modify it, ideally by mid-January. And the way I framed it here on this slide, there's actually kind of a unifying theme here, and that's Fox buybacks. The idea of being able to purchase Fox back off the open market, which is a sort of a powerful tool at any DAO's in any DAO's tool belt. But of course, how you execute that and what you do with that is also key. It actually relates to both SFox, namely buying Fox off the open market and then redistributing that Fox to people that are staking in the SFox contract. That's one really interesting approach, and it really, that would be a very powerful dynamic, because it's taking Fox off the open market, which is favorable from a price perspective. Not that we're looking to, just not that our goal is to juice the price of Fox, but it's a good signal and it's a good market dynamic. And then secondly, it's actually a way to directly reward stakers. So we have that SFox that's a work in progress. And then this also pertains to our revised liquidity mining program, specifically a super far out idea that John had last month regarding, like the original idea was to end our liquidity mining program gradually, basically cut the rewards down for the next phase. John posited an idea whereby we would combine use our Fox to be buying Fox, or basically keep the APYs high on our liquidity mining, and then be buying Fox off those markets, or off those pools. So that I just wanted to frame this, and this is again where it gets a little bit more heady, and it's exciting. But it's also like a fun challenge. For me, I'm more of a visual guy. I think over time it helped to sort of like create some visuals about how these components might work together. So that all said, I'm curious, like just in terms of SFox, or John, if I could get you back on the stage here. So again, the buybacks relate to both SFox and liquidity mining, and that's been a theme that's been popping back up. How do you see potentially these working in tandem together? Because they're separate but related and could be super complementary.
Yeah, I actually haven't been thinking about them too much as related, although I do see your point that they definitely could be. So that's an interesting thought. I'll just kind of give my thoughts on both of these really fast, and then we can talk more about it if you want. But so on the SFox side in general, I think at some point, and I'm not sure the right way to do this, if this should be a governance vote or what the mechanism is for deciding this, or maybe it should be TMDC or something like that. But I think that it would be good to establish a kind of DAO protocol where X amount, it can be a percentage, of revenue above and beyond expenses. So this is assuming once we get above and beyond of paying our monthly costs, etc., which I think we could be there within a month or two, just based on some of the revenue streams we started to develop. If we get to that point, I think it would be good to call it profit, basically whatever revenue we have above and beyond expenses, and saying X percentage of that is going to go to Fox buybacks every month. And that could be a lever that goes up and down, depending on what governance wants or whoever we empower to do that, depending on what the protocol and process is. And I think that's a good signal to send out to the community about how serious we are and how serious the DAO is. And this would be exactly the type of thing that we would want to power SFox, because we want to basically tell people when they're depositing SFox, this is how you get your share of that revenue, because X percentage goes to Fox buybacks, and then those Fox buybacks are then distributed every month to anyone who's deposited their Fox in the SFox contract once that is built. So I think thinking now about how we would work with that mechanism is worthwhile. I don't necessarily know what that percentage should be or what we should target, but I think it's worth starting the conversation around it. And yeah, I mean, to your point, it could even be that like a percentage of the revenue actually goes long-term towards buying protocol liquidity off the market, not just Fox. I mean, it could be one or both or a combination of those. I think in terms of the next liquidity mining program, I wouldn't necessarily conflate this with the same question. I would say that we still need to make sure to maintain, Fox is still a relatively young asset, and I think it's really important that we maintain liquidity, so I don't want us to do anything that would destroy that yet. And I think our best defense against that is aggressively buying up more protocol-owned liquidity. So yeah, I do really like this idea of keep the liquidity incentives relatively high and attractive over the next, basically 4+ months once the current one is out. But at the same time, really aggressively start targeting our bond program to buy up something like 30 million plus of liquidity, basically the majority of the liquidity in the pool. And we could decide what the right target is, 30 or 50 or 40 or something like that. And the idea is if we are quickly enough buying up that liquidity and staking it, as the DAO is now doing, the actual cost of that liquidity mining program will be much lower than whatever we allocate. So we could allocate, if we allocated the same amount, I'm not saying we should, but if we allocated the same amount as the last 4.5 months, which was around 15.7 or something like that, I forget the exact amount, then if we aggressively buy it up enough, by the time we get to the end of that program, if we are buying and staking our own liquidity, we will only have actually spent maybe 20% of that or less. So it actually ends up meaning the liquidity mining program itself is quite cheap. And at the end of that program, without disrupting the liquidity in the meantime, the DAO now owns a very significant amount of liquidity. And of course, that also goes towards diversification because half of that will be ETH. So the DAO will now own, 15 million plus worth of ETH if we've done that right, and maybe more depending on prices. So I think that's a really interesting way to go. And we can basically do that without disrupting liquidity at all and end up where 4+ months from February after this next program goes into effect, the DAO is in a really great position of owning a really sustainable amount of liquidity going forward. And then at the end of that 4 months, maybe we end liquidity mining entirely, or we put it down to just a trickle. So we have all sorts of optionality at that point.
That knock-on effect of naturally getting ETH exposure is great because, from a diversification standpoint, of course we do want stables as a hedge, but also we want to expand our crypto treasury, and ETH is quite a good asset to hold over the long run, I believe. So, and to clarify, John, so when you're talking about purchasing our own liquidity, you'd be talking about going into the these various places where our liquidity is pooled and using Treasury Fox to purchase said liquidity.
Correct. So we already have a bond up right now. That's the one that everyone knows and loves. I think we've got somewhere over $2 million worth of our own liquidity we've already purchased. And the way that works is we basically pay out Fox for LP tokens. So yes, this would require a largish amount of Fox, but I think it would be worth it. So let's just, at current prices, if we wanted to purchase $30 million worth of liquidity, it would probably take something like 50 million Fox over that amount of time. And you might be like, oh shit, that's a ton of Fox. But realize that you're getting probably half of that right back, because when you purchase the LP, you're getting 50% Fox back. And the other half is becoming ETH. So you're not really losing. The treasury will likely stay the same, if not increase, even through that program, versus where you do liquidity mining, that Fox goes right out the door and never comes back to the treasury. Unless it gets staked back via our own, basically us, the DAO staking. So I just see that as a reallocation of assets, and I think it's a totally reasonable one to make.
And to clarify, when you're talking about staking, you're not talking about the SFOX staking contract. You're talking about our existing staking contract.
Correct. Just staking into our farming contract, which is exactly what we're doing today. And you can if you look at Zapper and look at the DAO's treasury right now, you can see that since we only started staking our LP a few weeks ago, TMDC voted on that. We hadn't actually voted to do, and you can see that the DAO has already reclaimed something like, I'm just looking at it now, like something over 100. I don't think we've claimed yet, but around 100,000 Fox has been reclaimed just by the DAO staking its own LP over a few weeks. So very quickly, what that means is that every Fox reclaimed that way is one less Fox that has been paid out on liquidity mining, which makes our liquidity mining program that much cheaper every day. So the more Fox ETH LP we own that we then stake, the cheaper our liquidity mining costs become.
So that certainly is a win, reducing that cost. I'm curious, John, how do you feel about? In my mind, it is a noble goal, and I think sort of maybe I think where smart DAOs are headed to eventually wean themselves off of liquidity mining. The notion of protocol controlled value is so powerful, and it really even in these early stages we're seeing it work for us. How do you see us potentially weaning us off those rewards after maybe the next phase, assuming we did do this? So we kind of continue with our current program, albeit at a lower effective cost. But then kind of what's the end game here? Because I think, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think you agree with that idea of eventually, sort of gradually winding down liquidity mining as it currently exists and going into the protocol controlled value paradigm?
Yeah, really good question. Yeah, so the reason that I'm so bullish on this idea of basically let's really aggressively buy up our own liquidity in this next phase is so that at the end of that, so I'm just to make it easy, let's assume we do the exact same length of this last program. So it was 4.5 months. So let's say we do another 4.5 months of liquidity mining that we're mostly trying to reclaim via buying up our own liquidity, targeting something like $30 to $50 million worth of Fox ETH liquidity that the DAO ends up owning. If we achieve that at the end of that 4.5 months, I think we have every option in the world to reduce that liquidity mining or do basically whatever we want. I'm not sure what the right thing to do at that point will be. I think we need more data about where things are at that point, where the product is, where Fox is. But I think we could reduce liquidity mining like 90% plus at that point, if not 100%. And that will have all the optionality to basically let the DAO basically move its own liquidity around wherever it thinks it's needed. And also we'll have accumulated, a very significant amount of toke via our reactor at that point. And hopefully if the toke liquidity directing goes live in the next month or two as they plan, between those two things, owning 30 plus million of our own liquidity and having accumulated a significant toke position that we can use to direct further liquidity, at that point we basically don't need liquidity mining. At that point, I think it would only be used as a service because we want to offer some cool farming rewards. But honestly, those farming rewards will probably be better used elsewhere. Like we could do things like, another thing I want to talk about, like what if we used Fox liquidity mining rewards to incentivize our Rari pool to get more capital in there. So Faye recently announced that they're actually turning off all their own liquidity mining rewards and they're going to only target them on their Rari pools now that they're merged with Rari. I think exploring something like that could be really cool because we could turn the Fox and Friends Rari pool into like a significant revenue driver if we turned on a very small fee and got a lot of capital in there. So that might be more worthwhile over time. So between all those things, basically, I'm not 100% saying that we should like go to zero at that next 4.5 months, but I'm basically saying we would have the optionality to do so. Where I don't think we have that today. I think if we went to zero today, or even if we did a drastic reduction without doing the buy-ups like we're talking about, I think that could lead to very bad results and liquidity quickly disappearing for Fox and causing all sorts of other second-order bad effects that we're just not ready for. But I think once the DAO owns the majority or a very large amount of its own liquidity, that the risk of that becomes much lower and you have much more optionality to kind of do whatever we think is best.
Agreed. And it's good to know that this doesn't lock us into some sort of path dependence where we really are hooked on liquidity mining rewards. It's actually quite the opposite, a way to potentially gradually, to immediately reduce costs, but gradually wean ourselves off of those. H-Pain has a sweet little purple cow logo or avatar, and they're wondering in the stage chat, would it make sense or be feasible to modify the existing staking contract to allow rewards to be dripped back into the contract to keep Fox ETH LP in the treasury during the staking period?
I'm trying to understand the question. To be dripped back into the contract, keep Fox LP in the treasury. I'm not sure I fully understand the question. I can say that modifying the contract is not possible in one way or another. You can't modify the existing staking contract, so any modifications would require us launching a new staking contract. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Willie, if you're out there, I think we're going to have to launch a new contract anyway, because I don't think these mining contracts are designed to allow you to extend them. So like every time we launch one of these, we have to do a new contract. So
unfortunately, that is correct.
Yeah. So unfortunately, we're going to have to launch a new contract, and people will have to migrate their LP again. I'm hoping, maybe this is the last time that needs to happen. But yeah, the way these contracts work, we can't modify them once they're on chain.
I do agree that hopefully we can, and it sounds like with the kind of the plan we're gravitating towards, we can plan for this to be the final contract and the final time users who are currently farming will have to migrate.
Yeah, or at least it makes it less important. Like if we need to launch another one, we can do more interesting things, or we can just target different types of things. Like at that point, hopefully we have SFox the token reactor will be in full swing. It already is. So I think the main reason to launch one after that 4.5 months would be because we want to still give people good productive things to do with their Fox. But I think that's only going to expand, and we don't need to do that via Fox Pool 2 mining rewards anymore. I think we can get away from the Pool 2 mining rewards, and we can give better ways for people to make their Fox productive, like the token reactor, like SFox, and like other things that are going to develop, or like incentivizing liquidity in the Rari pool. So I think there's still plenty of opportunities, even better opportunities we can provide with less impermanent loss risk for people to get various rewards, or even for using the platform. Like that's something we've talked about is like once V2 is fully out there, maybe we redirect the rewards we would have used for liquidity mining, even at a much smaller clip, and just reward people for doing various things on the platform just to incentivize user growth. So like I'd rather us free up those funds to do more cool stuff with them rather than just incentivizing liquidity, which was super critical in the early stage of the DAO. But if we can get through this next phase and own a bunch of liquidity, it'll be far less critical moving forward.
Thanks for the color on that, guys. Yeah, so I think this is a powerful idea. It's also, we do want to consider kind of alternate approaches, look at the big picture. One thing is, I always like to think like, okay, well, what's the opportunity cost with doing XYZ strategy? In this case, there's not really a financial opportunity cost because we're using Fox to, we would be using Fox for these purchases of our own liquidity. We have ample Fox, so there's not much opportunity cost there. I suppose that we could come up with a alternate strategy. There is kind of there's kind of that binary there. If we don't do this, or if we do this approach, it's at the exclusion of something else. But it strikes me. I mean, if you guys are a little bit confused by this too, it took me a while to get my own brain around it. John has a DeFi brain operating at a super high level. It took me a minute to kind of grok what he was saying, but I really like I like the way this balances kind of the different needs and different goals of the DAO in terms of winding down liquidity mining eventually, but not doing that in an abrupt fashion, and these buybacks are also working towards getting us protocol controlled value. And then, alongside that, we do have SFox. And I want to be careful not to conflate the two too much, but they are related in the sense that, ultimately the excess revenue from all these various streams can be channeled into SFox and given to users or to holders, which is precisely, what we want to do. That really engenders a strong network effect, and especially gets that wonderful DeFi flywheel going. Just to give you guys a sense of how powerful some of these revenue streams could be. So notwithstanding all the excellent rev share type of agreements we can build out and those revenue streams, just the token rewards we have at current prices, they're bringing in. Let's just say that continues the current average of about maybe 200,000 a week. So we'll call that 800K a month of USD. Right now, our expenses for payroll are something in the range of 500,000. We'll round up to 600,000. But even then, just from a balance sheet standpoint, we're actually in the green just from that. So there's a lot of ways that we can actually become very deeply in the green, I think. Sorry, my cat is meowing. She says hi. We're at the very early stages. So that excess revenue plus the ability to distribute that to Fox holders is wonderful. And also not having to, I want to clarify that we're not advocating we're going to sell all our toke every month. This was actually an interesting discussion that came up when we were talking about January payroll is, we could, initially we were talking about selling a portion of our toke as well as taking a loan, albeit a smaller loan. But there's something to be said for holding on to that toke. But we don't want to ever have to just use one of these tools. I think we can create a really good balance. So yeah, I'm just so excited about like the big picture. In terms of the next steps for this one, to John's point, I think we need to talk about some of the details, and then based on that, create a governance proposal. This would certainly be a overall governance proposal, and not something just under the TMDC, because it is a bigger picture type issue affecting the overall DAO and way beyond the TMDC $60 million mandate, or 60 million Fox mandate. So key variables here are like, what percentage of excess revenue goes back to those buybacks? Specifically, what do we target for liquidity mining? Do we keep things exactly the same right now? So these are all areas for open discussion over the next few weeks here. Let's see. We do have one last item on here, but before we jump into that, any last thoughts there on this topic? All right. The last bullet point here is something I copied in verbatim from what John added to the channel. John, you said you wanted to discuss setting up a TFox to Fox pool to allow for TFox collateral.
Yeah, so happy to talk about this. So the goal here ultimately is to allow TFox to become collateral on Rari. So this is something I know the Rari team was already talking about. They've reached out to us and asked if we were interested, to which we said yes. So the idea would be that you could, whenever you deposit Fox into the token reactor right now, you get TFox 1-to-1 in return. So for every 1 Fox you get 1 TFox. And the idea here is, what if you could take your TFox, deposit it on Rari, and take out loans against it? So you would still be gaining your Tokenomics rewards, your toke rewards that you have from depositing into Fox, but you would also then, it would make the asset even more productive because you could now take loans against it, which would allow, all sorts of fun degen strategies, depending what you want to do. Could just be used to fund various things in your life if you just want a stablecoin loan because you need to make a purchase, but you don't want to sell your Fox and you want it to keep earning interest. But it could also be used to do fun things like taking, a loan and going long more Fox and then redepositing to Tokenomics and then redepositing your collateral, all while continuing to gain further toke rewards. So it allows for a lot of cool things, but one of the prereqs for this is that there would need to be some way for Rari liquidators to be able to basically cash out their TFox. Because otherwise they can't liquidate in time, which needs to be done quickly if someone is under collateralized on their position. So what this would mean is we would need some sort from Tokenomics. They've been talking about it on Twitter even over the last week and saying that they're making progress. But I think the idea is you would basically set up like a curve pool. So curve is really just, traditional curve, at least they're expanding now, is designed for these kind of 1-to-1 asset swaps where the assets are more or less supposed to be equal in value. So we would basically set up a curve pool consisting of Fox and TFox, and then maybe this could even eventually be expanded to allow for something like an SFox or something, but I don't know, that might get a little complicated because it's a rebasing token. But the idea is that you would have a curve pool between Fox and TFox, and this would then be the prereq for us to be making TFox collateral on Rari. So that would be really cool. I don't know, and a cool way, and the DAO could basically do this itself, is basically what I'm saying. Is so a cool thing about this big Fox deposit that the DAO just made in the Tokenomics reactor is the DAO now owns 50 million TFox. So it deposited 50 million Fox and now has 50 million TFox. We could take a portion of that plus some additional Fox and set up a pool. So we wouldn't need to necessarily use liquidity mining rewards or anything like that. The DAO could just fund this as like a public good, I don't know how much. We'd have to decide what the requirements are and get that more from the Rari team. But basically we would set up, just with DAO funded liquidity, a TFox Fox pool. And as a result, that opens up this whole world of collateral, which would be super cool. So more details to come on this because we're kind of waiting on the Rari and Tokenomics teams to figure out all the details of what's needed. I did invite Jack Lipstone from Rari to come chat about this next week. I was asking if he could come chat about it today, but he said that they'd probably be more ready next week. So he hasn't accepted that yet, but he said that he would get back to me. So either way, we should have more info by the Tokenomics call next week to talk about this. But once it's ready, I think this is a no-brainer thing for the DAO to do. Go ahead, fund that, and now anyone in the community can now take loans against their TFOX, and the DAO itself can take loans against its TFOX. So it ultimately would just lead to a way more productive asset. To me, it kind of seems like a no-brainer.
And not too difficult here. It sounds like what the necessary steps would be, that this would entail Rari actually opening up pools to T tokens, allowing them to be deposited into pools, and then we would simply set up a curve pool. I'm actually not familiar with that process. Is this would we actually have to interact with Curve, or would that be a fairly permissionless thing that we as the DAO would just kind of set up ourselves?
That is a good question that I am not an expert on. I believe that anyone can set up a version of the Curve factory pools. I think there's various versions of the Curve pools. One that anyone can set up, and then another one that requires whitelisting by them. Do you know more about that, Willie? I'm actually not an expert on that.
Sorry, I was a bit tuned out, but whether anyone can deploy a curve pool?
Yeah.
I think you need to go. I don't think it's permissionless. I think you need to go through the governance process. Definitely, if you want to get added to their UI, you got to go through them. And if you want to have any kind of curve rewards, for sure, you got to go through them.
Well, I think if I'm correct, I think there's something where they have Curve factories where anyone can deploy them. And then you're right, to get whitelisted in their interface, you need to go through them. But I think that this might not even require being in the interface. It might just require the factory. So anyway, that's something we need to look into. I remember this because I remember Alchemex did this in the early days with ALUSD, and they used a factory before they got on Curve proper.
Super cool.
So I think that's the case. Again, not an expert, just a lowly degen learning like everyone else. But I'm pretty sure that's the case, and I'll get more info from Jack at Rari about that, so we can figure that out before we make any decisions.
Cool. Yeah, definitely something to keep in mind. And when you consider, we own 50 million TFOX tokens. That is a lot of potential value that we could use in Rari. And again, it kind of keeping with that theme of just spreading our presence in various ways throughout DeFi land. So yeah, Rari is Rari/Fei. They have a lot of interesting things going on. I think these other things that I alluded to earlier could make Rari even more of an attractive choice for us to utilize. I get the sense they'll be rolling out some of this stuff soon. Again, we've really had a good time chatting with them about various things, and of course integrating liquidity as a service and using the Rari pools. So yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that two of the other DAOs that we have formed really strong relationships with just through the end of last year were both Fei and Rari, and then they merged together. So now we have a super strong relationship between.
Yeah, these relationships are going to get so powerful, I think. When you talk about in terms of there's relationships at the integration level, at the rev share level, in terms of actual token swaps, really having a mutual direct financial interest in each other's performance and growth. And then, as DAOs become more powerful and more widespread, and we have this ongoing Cambrian explosion of DAOs, that there's just going to be even more integration possibilities. And ShapeShift is unique in the sense that we are so perfectly positioned to tap into I don't want to say just about any DAO, but we are really well positioned to tap into different relationships with all types of DAOs, particularly in DeFi. But it's just such a fun growth area.
Yeah, super cool.
So we got 8 minutes left here. We've covered all the topics, but does anybody else have any tokenomics related stuff they want to chat about?
think that's all I have for now. I need to go back in my lab to think of some more ideas to throw at the community. But see us execute on a few of these first. I'm super excited for all these irons we have in the fire now. I think they're going to be awesome. And there's just a lot of cool stuff to come on Fox front. I guess we can do a very brief update on SFox. There's nothing official yet, but there's some both the engineering and product work stream and some contributors have been talking about, including Ocean, who's done a little pre-work on this. I think he might actually even have a demo tomorrow that he mentioned for the engineering demos. So little alpha come the engineering demos tomorrow. Have been working on this concept of how do we create SFox and get it out the door. And I think there might be a bounty coming sometime this week by a well-known Fox who might fund one to get this out the door. So more to come on that. There is progress on it, and I'm hoping that there'll be more shared with the community over the coming week.
Yeah, that's exciting. I've been in software and crypto long enough to never want to pin people down too granularly on timelines. But do you feel reasonably optimistic that SFox is something that could launch in Q1, given where we're at right now?
Oh, that's beyond my. I'm probably not enough of an engineering expert to say. I would say that I hope that's the case. I think it's a good goal to see it by the end of Q1, and we'll just have to see.
It does feel like we have a good amount of momentum on this, and I think it's also not to imply that we need to just like haul ass and do this ASAP. It's a big component and a fundamental component of how value gets distributed to Fox holders and our overall tokenomics model. So we want to do it right.
Yeah, so big alpha coming there. Keep your eye on the forums and other various discussions. And yeah, I would say join the engineering demos tomorrow. I'm putting Ocean on the spot, but I did see him mention that he might demo a prototype he's been working on that front.
That's some juicy alpha. Really excited for that demo. I think the conversation happening in stage chat right now is interesting on like would T-Fox trade at a discount to Fox? And yeah, of course, ultimately no one knows. That is up to ultimately decided by the market. But I think you're right. I think you're right, Ocean. At least initially, it would probably trade at a slight discount because it's a bit likely will be a bit less liquid and has that additional smart contract risk. I think the similar analogy that we can look at is like all of these staked Ethereum derivatives. And right now, those even though they are interest bearing, they all trade at a discount right now. But there's a lot of speculation that could change once there's less smart contract risk. It's proven that you actually can turn those derivative staked ETH tokens back into regular ETH on ETH2, and because there's that wait list to get a validator going, so you won't be able to just, and we'll have a similar dynamic with the T-Fox where at least with T-Fox you don't start earning the interest until the next cycle. So for that reason, potentially once the smart contract risk goes away, it could actually trade at a slight premium, but ultimately it would be up to the market. But that's my hypothesis there based on what we've seen from these staked ETH tokens.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and I don't know the answer either. I think you're probably right that like short term it would probably trade at a discount, but I feel like long term an interest bearing asset should be more valuable than the asset itself. But who knows? I haven't seen that play out long enough yet.
Agreed.
Great. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks John and Willie and everybody that's been contributing to the collective brain of tokenomics. Lots going on here as we kick off the year. Just looking forward to making more progress on all these fronts. On another note, hope everybody is staying healthy. I know a fair amount of people have been under the weather lately. Stay safe and stay healthy. Looking forward to having a great 2022 with you guys. So thank you.
GM, everybody.
GM off.